I'm Vanessa Konecki, and this is Research Administration in a Nutshell, a series where I make short videos about different activities that we engage in as research administrators and what it's like to be an RA. Drop a like on the video or subscribe to the channel on YouTube for more research administration stuff. And a massive, massive thank you to all of the supporters on Patreon who help keep my channel alive. More information on how you can support at the end, but for now, let's get going. The uniform guidance updates were recently announced for 2024, and these updates are to create a more streamlined, simplified, and transparent federal financial assistance guideline. Because ultimately what they're trying to do is reduce the burden on federal agencies, on applicants, and on recipients, because let me tell you, it is freaking chaotic. If you have been doing this for any period of time, you know that the uniform guidance is a big confusing document in which there are many inconsistencies. So revision is meant to streamline that process. Specifically related to indirect costs, there are a few things that are being updated and changed that you probably want to know about. The first is that the threshold for equipment is being increased from $5,000 to $10,000. So when equipment is being purchased at the cost of $10,000 or under, it can be expensed instead of capitalized. And then if it's $10,000 or more, now that counts as equipment, and it is IDC exempt. The other change that they're making is a change in the definition for modified total direct costs. Okay, now modified total direct costs excludes equipment, capital expenditures, charges for patient care, rental costs, tuition remission, scholarships, fellowships, and participant support costs. And what they've changed is, and the portion of each subaward in excess of $50,000, which is up from the $25,000 per sub that used to exist. Now, something to keep in mind is that for applying these changes to the base of MTDC, this can only be done after your next federally negotiated rate activity. So for example, let's say you just finished negotiating your federal rate like last month, then you're going to be stuck with the current thresholds, $25,000 and $5,000 for equipment, rather than the higher numbers, which you will then be able to renegotiate when you do your negotiation later. Now, let's say, for example, that you are currently in the middle of negotiating your rate. Gil Tran mentioned in his Attain session, where the link is available for you to watch from this snapshot, it'll take you right over to Attain, where he talks about that there is a gray area if you are currently negotiating your rate, and that you can likely talk to your the partner with whom you're negotiating, your consultant, and they can help you sort of get it in with the current rate agreement. This is something that RAs typically do not get deeply involved in. We're not involved in the rate negotiations, but these are things that I typically like to know just so that I can keep my ear to the ground and understand what's happening. The other thing that has changed is that the de minimis rate for indirect costs has been raised from 10% to 15% to allow for better recovery of indirect costs when you don't have a negotiated rate. So if you are working with an organization that does not have a current federally negotiated indirect cost rate, then they can elect to change it to 15%, and they can charge up to 15% of the MTDC. And that is going to be effective in 10/1/2024. Now, something to keep in mind is that the Fed has created a lot more leeway and accessibility for many CBOs, tribal organizations, states to be able to make some of these determinations on their own, because historically they have applied very strict requirements and to these particular organizations. That has now changed, so there's a little bit more leeway in that space. Now, a lot of the reasons why these changes are coming into place is because over the last few years, as I have been doing more pro bono work with smaller organizations that do not have research administrators, what we have found is that it is virtually impossible for community-based organizations to be able to submit for grants because of the complexity with which the regulations are written. It is impossible. And what is delightful to see with all these changes is that they are in fact simplifying it and making the process a little bit more accessible. Some of the questions that you're going to want to ask your boss about this is how are we implementing the changes to the OMB guidance, and what is our equipment threshold? So always know what your own equipment threshold is anyway, because some of these things may have already been taken care of in advance during your previous federally negotiated rate related to your equipment thresholds. Now, if you'll notice here, there's also a lot of questions for you to take to ask your manager related to your indirect cost rate. These are the things that are going to help you get an understanding of how indirect cost rates are applied at your organization, what resources you have at your disposal, and how you should engage with IDC during your pre- and post-award process. Thank you for watching. Another massive thank you to the supporters on Patreon who help keep my channel alive. You can support for less than $5 a month. Check the video description for links to the Patreon, LinkedIn, and my website. And as always, have a great day.